The open public meeting law requires that I notify anyone recording this meeting to please identify themselves, and also that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. Is there anyone else here filming this or recording this? Please identify yourself. Hearing none, then we'll keep moving. The first item is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of May 14th, 2019. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 3, request authorization to execute an amended ground lease with TS Partners LLC for the redevelopment and use of parcel R located within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park, and to assign the lease to RBK, establish a fee for additional on-site parking, and to allow 10,000 square feet of first-floor food service restaurant space of the Phase 2 building. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. BPDA entered into a lease with TS Partners for the redevelopment of Parcel R in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park in 2015. They plan to build 3 buildings totaling 360,000 square feet. In 2017, the property was subdivided, and the lease was split into 2 separate leases, each roughly 2 acres. The Phase 1 lease was assigned to a partnership with related BLA and Kavanaugh Advisory Services, now known as RBK1. Per the transaction rent section of that lease, RBK1 compensated BPDA $60,000 for the right to assign the lease, which represented 1% of the appraised value, which was a condition of a transfer of the lease, which will be the case for what I'm here to ask for today. Phase 1 development of 120,000 square feet is it's almost done. They're scheduled for occupancy in late 2019, and they're moving on to Phase 2. Similar to Phase 1, they've requested to assign the Phase 2 lease to the same corporate entities forming RBK2. Phase 2 will be 2 buildings of 120,000 square feet, and they're scheduled to break ground next month. They're already out there getting ready to break ground. As a condition of the Phase 2 lease, RBK2 will also pay to BPDA 1% of the appraised value as a transaction fee. The market has changed since 2017, and the appraised value of Phase 2 will result in a fee to BPDA of $240,000 as a fee for the assignment of the lease. RBK2 is also requested to create 45 additional parking spaces on site, which would be deducted from our finite supply of parking that the federal government allows us to have in the park. So there's a fee for the right for those additional spaces. We've had an independent appraisal, and the opinion is that the right to build the spaces is worth about $300 per space per rental fee per month, which will result in an increase in rent of $162,000 per year to BPDA. RBK2 has further requested the right to build up to 10,000 square feet of restaurant food service in one of the buildings to service not only their tenants but other occupants of the marine park. The 10,000 square feet also comes out of our commercial allotment, commercial square feet, which has a finite supply, so there's a price for that too, which would result in an additional rent of $60,000 per year for the right to build the restaurant. So if approved, the base rent will increase from $343,000 to $565,000 per year, and plus the initial one-time payment of $240,000.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dennis. Does that conclude your presentation? Any questions on the board?
I have a question. Dennis, can you explain the federal parking freeze and how that works in the park, and if we're running up against the limits of it, how does that affect development, and how does that work?
I'll explain it as best I can. There's a federal parking freeze from back in the 90s, where in the case of the marine park, we were allocated a certain amount of spaces that we can't exceed. We can move them around the park, but we can't exceed them. One of the things we're looking at now is whether to increase the garage, parking and expand the garage to absorb some of the parking requirement. With this development, with others that are being proposed in the park, parking is going to be it's going to be very, very tight. We're probably going to use up certainly the remainder of the spaces. And each site within the park has been allocated a certain amount of spaces, and we have some in reserve that, as those are assigned to additional development sites, there's a fee that would have to be paid for the right to have those spaces. The specifics of the federal parking freeze, I'm not an expert on that. I've just kind of accepted it because I've been told that as long as I've been here that it existed, and I've never really analyzed it to speak as an expert on it. I've just accepted that it's there.
Got it.
Dennis, do you know the number? How many numbers, what is it set at, and where are we at?
I think I know, but I think Devin knows better.
Okay.
So I don't know the precise number, but we have about 300 spaces left that are assigned to parcels where we might do garage expansion. So what we're doing in making this allocation is deciding that those spaces we're going to sell to the developer, and we're not going to add that to the garage. So the number of spaces sold, I think it's 48 spaces, decreases from that 300. There are parking freeze is the entire Piers district it's an EPA mandated parking freeze. It's the entire Piers district of the seaport. So there are some spaces that are also allocated to the Fan Pier area and the sort of Massport Middle area that could theoretically be used in the marine park, but the spaces under our control that we can allocate is about 300 spaces remaining that aren't assigned to a particular
So we have
property.
a 300-car cushion.
Yes.
What's that max number?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry. We can get you that number.
That's okay. I'm just curious, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis. Item number 3, request authorization to extend a license agreement with Mass, Iraq, and Afghanistan Fallen Veterans Heroes Memorial Fund for the continued use of 3,495 square feet of storage in cages B11, B13, and B14, and limited use of the loading dock area located at 12 Channel Street within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mass Fallen Heroes is a not-for-profit corporation honoring Massachusetts servicemen and women who were killed in the line of duty, and particularly since 2011. Since 9/11. One of their missions is to raise funds to construct a 50-foot monument to honor the Massachusetts fallen heroes. They also provide support services and counseling to veterans and Gold Star families. Mass Fallen Heroes benefits from the generosity of local retailer who donates surplus inventory to them, which they subsequently resell to raise revenue. In 2014, it was my pleasure to request permission to allow Mass Fallen Heroes to utilize some of the storage cages that we have at 12 Channel Street. Several years ago, we built out chain link cages in the basement of the building for storage. We had a license with them, which expires soon. They've been unable to find, understandably in this market, a suitable low-cost alternative. Because of who they are and the benevolence that we show some not-for-profits, I'm pleased to ask for an extension, a 5-year extension of that license to allow them to continue to store the 12 channel.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item number 4, request authorization to re-advertise and reissue a request for proposal to develop the BPDA-owned building located at 24 Dry Dock Avenue within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, and members of the board. 24 Dry Dock Avenue in the Marine Park is an approximately 32,000 square foot square feet of land improved by a 3-story structure containing approximately 30,000 square feet of space plus basement. This property was originally part of Boston Ship Repair's lease for the Dry Dock Number 3 complex. The purpose of the RFP issuance is to redevelop this underutilized property while providing support for Boston Ship Repair's business and the jobs associated with it. Accordingly, BPDA issued an RFP for 24 Dry Dock Ave on November 21st, 2018, and we received 7 proposals. After much consideration, staff rejected all 7 proposals and recommends re-advertising and reissuing the RFP in order to ultimately achieve the best possible project for the people of the City of Boston, the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park, and the BPDA. So the re-advertised and reissued RFP is being fine-tuned in the following areas in order to ensure that proponents offer expanded clarity in their submitted proposals. Number 1, diversity and inclusion. The revised RFP will require further refinement of the plans so that the BPDA can reasonably assess if the plans are both quantifiable and achievable. Number 2, revenue potential. The refined RFP will provide greater clarity on the 2 important financial goals of significant ground lease revenue and rent subsidy for Boston Ship Repair. 3, we'll have greater consistency in the presentation of financial pro formas because the revised RFP will require proponents to utilize financial templates that we'll provide them with in this RFP, thus creating a more consistent format through which to compare the various financial submissions. 4, in terms of development restrictions and uses, the new RFP will require developers to provide greater clarity related to their Chapter 91 limitations on commercial uses as well as the maximum density. And 5, with price offer, the revised RFP will make it clear that the price submitted in the proposals shall be the best and final offer. This reissuance will also allow staff to commission an updated appraisal in order to accurately reflect the very rapidly changing value in the real estate market of the Marine Park. So staff therefore recommends reissuing an RFP to facilitate the redevelopment of 24 Dry Dock Avenue. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, we're going to request authorization to approve the Economic Development and Industrial Corporation budget for FY20. And Michelle? Not Michelle.
Thank you. I'm Brian Conley, the Director of Finance for the BPDA. Members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today and for taking up the BPDA budget for FY20. I just wanted to thank my staff, Finance and Accounting, who are here today, who put in a lot of effort in pulling together the spreadsheets and the data for the presentation you're about to see. I'd also like to thank Bob Luisi, the agency controller, and Michelle Goldberg for their hard work and effort in pulling all this together, using Michelle's analogy of herding the cats to get this together. It was a great job. So I told her I would be very brief, and I'm going to pull it over to Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Excited to have you on the team. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. I am Michelle Goldberg, the Budget Director for the Boston Planning and Development Agency. As Brian said, there are fearless warriors here from the Finance Department who do heroic feats on a daily basis to make sure that the agency thrives. I'm honored to work alongside them and excited to share with everyone what we've been up to. I'm here today seeking approval for fiscal year 2020 annual operating and capital budgets for both the EDIC and later on tonight, the BRA. I know my quarterly updates are usually pretty quick and painless. We gotta go a little bit deeper tonight, but I promise it won't be too painful. The last few updates I brought you good news, and that's true for FY20 as well. So let's dive in here. FY20 is the 4th budget I have participated in, and this year's budget truly reflects how the organization is changing. It's also about 3 years since we moved from the BRA to the BPDA, and the Finance Department has truly embraced this transformation. We adopted these goals that are up here for the budget, and you can see the steps that we have taken to deliver results in the name of these goals. These efforts play out in the FY20 budget, and I will try to point them out as we walk through the detail. What has really become the cornerstone of the Finance Department's work is figuring out how we make sure the BPDA can address its long list of infrastructure needs over a long period of time in an uncertain economic climate. While our planners and developers are out working and trying to imagine Boston 2030, we are imagining BPDA 2030. The BPDA is a very long list of infrastructure needs, and as we look across the city, construction costs are increasing at an accelerating rate. So it's with great care and urgency that we approached our financial planning for FY20 and beyond. Before we dive into any annual budget, I like to remind folks that when you look at the numbers in the subsequent tables today, let's see. And when we talk about the BRA and the EDIC, there are other entities in the BPDA family. EDIC acts as a fiscal administrative agent for BIDFA, BLDC, and FYOB by providing staff, space, technology, administrative support, and even sometimes financial support when needed. Then we have our trusty old pie charts. This helps show the proportion of our operating activity. If I had more time, we could go into how this compares to last year because it is interesting, but I will touch on the intercompany grant for just a moment. Whenever we do quarterly updates, we talk about the relationship between the grants and donations revenue category and the contractual services expense category. Last year, grants and donations was 28%, and in FY20, it's 30%. But in FY19, contractual services was 30%, and now it's only 25%. A few items emerged during the FY20 budget development process that are already showing us how much this organization is changing. And for anyone who's trying to guess, the intercompany grant is funding items in property management and administrative expense instead of contractual services like it was in years past. All right, so let's skip on over to the summary table. When I was here for the third quarter, I shared that we are about $18 million ahead of where we plan to be for FY19. That still holds true, and we are projecting a healthy and favorable bottom line. That favorable performance is the result of a collection of one-time events and generally strong performance in certain categories. We took a hard look at the numbers and chose a few items for FY20 to include in an effort to have better budgets that account for one-time items in revenue. That's the primary example for FY20 is the inclusion of the South Station air rights agreement for $3.8 million, which is included in the sale of real estate category. This item is not officially finalized, but we have chosen to include it in hopes that it will minimize the chance of a variance as we execute on this year's plan. You can also see the increase in rental, leases, and parking, which is mostly attributed to schedule changes in certain lease agreements. Last year, the China Trade Building had one tenant that moved in and started making payments mid-year, so this will be the first 12-month cycle where it's fully occupied for the full 12 months. On the expense side, there are some interesting things going on as well. We can come back to personnel later on when we talk about headcount, but this is an area we plan to explore in the coming years when we work on position management best practices. We're still riding the waves of our efforts to control benefit costs, and you can see compared to previous years, we are seeing an uptick. This is mostly due to our adjustments to the OPEB schedule. The last schedule called for about $1.3 million of post-retirement benefit expenses, but changes made to the rules set forth by GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, has changed the definition of certain categories, and we will now be making a $2 million payment this year. The administrative expense category is also seeing a slight uptick as we invest in translation services and advertising to expand our community engagement efforts. We are also anticipating increases as we prepare our parking lots to go live with new equipment, and that requires additional connectivity investments. Keep in mind, translation services and administrative expenses are the type of items that will be recurring and embedded in how we operate going forward, whereas our telecom expenses are going to be one-time. Contractual services is home to the budget for planning consulting services, and each year we do zero-based budgeting by working closely with the planning department to link up budget development and procurement schedules, and so we anticipate about $1 million of spending on that activity in FY20. OWD's community-based organization spending is also in this group, and it's in line with the revenues received. What I'm really excited to talk about is what's happening in the property management category. It's interesting because we are witnessing the complicated connection between our capital budgets, our cash management, our over $200 million of infrastructure needs, our favorable operating performance, and our capital reserve fund. In October, we received a board approval to establish a capital reserve fund to help account for how we're going to address those infrastructure needs. We recognize that the favorable economic performance that we are seeing may not last, and every year that goes by, it gets more and more expensive to address those needs. So when we sat down in January and began to discuss our capital plan, we identified and will be several projects that will be included in the budget before you. Two key projects presented very distinctive circumstances. And after working through the details, the Charlestown Navy Yard Culvert Sinkhole Project and the demolition and remediation of Building 108 actually landed in our operating budget. The BRA is going to use a blend of EDIC intercompany grant and other eligible funds to cover the cost of these two projects. So when you see that big increase in the property management category, that's why. This next slide is basically everything that I just said, but here in case folks look at this presentation without the video, so we can skip on and take a look at headcount and circle back over personnel expenses. The BPDA staff and related benefits are the largest cost center. Reporting on headcount over time can be tricky because you need to go beyond payroll data to capture vacancies. This table shows how the actual count in FY18 as of the April data poll was 222 full-time staff. We identified over 30 vacancies to include when we built the FY19 budget. This April, we had 243 full-time staff. So the BPDA did a good job of recruiting talent. Thank you, HR. When we examine new position requests and vacancies for FY20, we identified a total of 25 positions, 8 of which were brand new positions. Folks should know that when we budget for vacancies, we realize that staff come and go, and therefore we budget those positions at a reduced amount to account for salary savings. So if we flip back for a minute to the summary tables, we can see that our salary line is growing. We put just under $1 million in the salary line to cover expenses for COLA, merit, compensation, adjustments, promotion, and possible temporary staff. We are trying to build out how we count for staff and monitor attrition over time, and I believe future years we will be able to tighten this up a little bit. To wrap up the discussion on salaries and headcount, let's just take a quick look at this graph that shows the relative fluctuation of staff over time. It seems to show that our attrition patterns have a cycle, and we will be working closely with our HR team in FY20 to build out analytics on this topic. Saving the best for last, capital. We talk a lot about the long-term capital needs and how we are working to figure out how to leverage all the financial options. The FY20 capital budget includes all the projects currently underway and requests to approve new project spending. The most notable new projects for EDIC include getting repairs going at the garage, rehabilitation to the bulkhead at the East Jetty, investments in public realm along Northern Ave. This is a project that the city is chipping in for, so that's great. And some smaller items like computers, equipment, vehicles for our operations team. For BRA at the China Trade Building, we will be painting the lobby, fixing the atrium, and replacing windows throughout the building. What FY20 has really shown us is that construction can happen in both the capital and the operating budget. As finance and the real estate team work through the long list of infrastructure needs, we are discovering that the devil is really in the details, and certain factors about projects may direct it towards the capital or the operating budget. So although the BRA capital budget looks small, there will be those two large construction projects going on that we had mentioned, the Charlestown Navy Yard Culvert Sinkhole and the demolition and remediation of Building 108. Our controller, Bob Luisi, is here and can certainly dig in on this if folks are curious. So with that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you for the time to present to you, and thank you to the finance staff for all their hard work. I also want to give a special thank you to our graphics team, Stephen Costa and Olivia Roos. They are a small but mighty force in our agency, and they helped me make sure that you guys got a very drafty copy of our FY20 budget book. It's a work in progress, but I'm also excited that they helped me give you a glimpse into how much work it really takes to keep this document alive year after year. With that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Brian. Are there any questions from the board?
Thank you, Michelle. I have one question. Can you talk about how those two Charlestown Navy Yard projects ended up in operating as opposed to capital?
Sure, but I think Bob might give you a better answer, so would you mind helping me out, Bob?
Thank you, Bob.
Good evening. Bob Luisi, Director Burke, board members, Secretary, Director Golden. The answer to that question is it's an accounting treatment situation. So generally speaking, when you improve something, it becomes a capital asset and it's depreciated over time. When you fill a sinkhole, you've just made it whole again. So there's no real asset appreciation. And the same thing when you tear down a building to get the land ready to go. That's a little trickier, but we've decided after consultation with our auditors that this is the proper accounting treatment, and it becomes an operating expense rather than a capital line item that's depreciated over time.
It's more like
Yeah.
repair and maintenance, or kind of?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's an easier way to say it.
Okay, great, thank you.
So if there's no further questions, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bob. Item number 6, personnel. Siobhan.
Good job, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Madam Secretary. This afternoon on the EDIC agenda, there are just some personnel items for your consideration. There are 4 appointments with further details listed for your review on the memo. The first is Tracy Phil Ames, Assistant Deputy Director of Programming in YOU, which is Youth Options Unlimited in OWD. Dylan Darcy, Financial Analyst in the Budgeting Department. Morgan McDaniel, Real Estate Development Officer in the Real Estate Department. Kayla Myros, Research Manager in the Research Department. And Charlotte Ong, Planner 2. We have 7 employment service contracts with additional details listed in the board memo. Those 7 are Mark Bemis in OWD, Joanne Evans in OWD, Ryan Frenia in Compliance Department, Philip Gomez in MIS, which is Management Information Systems, Bernice Kimbrell, OWD, Katie Leisner, the Administration Department of OWD, and Claire Shepard in Administration OWD. There's 1 status change for your consideration. Samantha Medeiros, Junior Finance Coordinator. And we have 3 travel items for your consideration with details listed in the board memo. They're Shirley Austin, Case Manager in OWD, Lynn Sanders, Assistant Deputy Director of OWD, and Nathaniel Smith, Chief Archivist. And then finally, we have 2 departures with details listed in the board memo, and they are Jeanette Carlavale, HR Generalist, and Avanti Crovey, who's a Research Assistant.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you. And I need a motion to adjourn the EDIC meeting.
I move we adjourn the EDIC meeting.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. The open meeting law requires that I notify that if anyone is recording this meeting, to please identify themselves. And that I also notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. Is there anyone else in the audience that recording this meeting or filming anything? Okay. The first item is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of May 16th, 2019 board meeting. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The next 4 items I'm going to read together and take one vote. Item number 2, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on July 11, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. or at a time and date to be determined by the director to consider the proposed Cote Village project located at Cummins Highway and Regis Road in the Mattapan District under Chapter 121A of the General Laws of Massachusetts. Item number 3, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on July 11th, 2019 at 5:40 PM, or at a time and date to be determined by the director, to consider the first amendment to the amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 77 at 6 through 26 New Street in East Boston. Item number 4, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on July 11th, 2019 at 5:50 PM, or at a time and date to be determined by the director, to consider the 1241 Boylston Street project in Fenway as a development impact project. And finally, number 5, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on July 11, 2019 at 6 PM, or at a time and date to be determined by the director, to consider the Boston University 5th Institutional Master Plan Amendment and Data Sciences Center project as a development impact project. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All is in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is the Board of Appeal. Are there any changes, Jeff, to the package?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. 55 petitions have been prepared by agency staff to be transmitted to the Board of Appeal. There have been no changes. These recommendations will be made for the remaining meetings in June and the July 9th meeting.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Jeff. Item number 7, request authorization to award final designation to U Homes LLC Urbanica as the redeveloper of 90 Anthorpe Street in Brighton for 20 home ownership units, including 12 income-restricted units, 22 on-site parking spaces, community space, and bicycle storage, and to disperse $100,000 from the reasonable environmental due diligence costs from Harvard University. Gerald, and you're going to have to explain the reasonable environmental due diligence costs.
That was on my list of items to explain. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Director Golden. I'm very pleased to be here to request final designation for Urbanica as the redeveloper of this piece of land, which is owned by Harvard University. As you probably remember from some previous board actions, we designated them as, gave them tentative designation. We approved their small project review application last summer, and they're now at a point where they are ready to break ground, we think, in August. So this is an exciting project. Harvard agreed to donate the land to a user of our selection for a use to be determined by us through a community process. This is 20 units of ownership housing. 12 of them will be affordable at 80 and 100% of AMI, and it includes some publicly accessible open space for the neighborhood. So I think it'll be a great architectural addition. It will provide much needed ownership housing, much needed affordable ownership housing, as well as some open space. So I'm proud of this. I'm proud of the work that everybody involved has done, and pleased that we've gotten to this point. Harvard had agreed to reimburse Urbanica for up to $100,000 of, as it's termed in the memorandum of agreement between us and Harvard, reasonable environmental due diligence costs. So those are undetermined as of yet because some of the testing has happened. There may be some additional testing. Harvard will pay the final amount to us. We will then disperse that amount to Urbanica, so I wanted to make sure that we had authorization from the board so that Urbanica can get refunded for whatever amount is determined to be eligible under the terms of the MOA. I'm here to answer any questions. Cameron Zahedi of Urbanica is here if you have any questions. There's an image from the presentation that you saw in August. So that's all I have to say, but if you have anything else to ask me, please feel free.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. Are there any questions from the board?
I have one question, Gerald. How does the owner occupancy restriction work? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So that will be, this is an item that came about because the Allston-Brighton CDC runs a program. This is another one of the community benefits that we had agreed to with Harvard. They provided seed funding for the CDC to purchase homes in the neighborhood in cash, go head-to-head with some of the investors who are purchasing properties, bring them up to code or make improvements, and then resell them to buyers who agreed to a deed restriction that required owner occupancy. That has not, as far as we can tell, after more than a dozen of those transactions through the CDC program, impacted their ability to sell to buyers who want to live in the neighborhood and live in the property rather than buying them as investment properties. So this was something that the neighborhood, when we held the community meetings and open houses around this property, was very interested in seeing. We have not negotiated exactly the terms of that. We imagine including a little more flexibility probably than has been the case with the CDC. So for example, allowing an owner to rent the unit out for, let's say, 24 of every months of every 5 years, for example, to allow some flexibility that would prevent an investor from buying it to use simply as an investment property or becoming an absentee landlord, but would also provide some flexibility for the unit owner. We expect that and some other details to be negotiated in an agreement that's still underway with Urbanica.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Both ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Item number 8, request authorization to award final designation to EBCDC, Inc., the nonprofit corporation affiliated with the East Boston Community Development Corporation, as redeveloper for the lease and redevelopment of 146 to 172 Condor Street. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In October of 2016, the board awarded tentative designation status to the East Boston Community Development Corporation for the development of a 7-acre parcel at 146 Condor Street in East Boston. The intent is to develop a maritime industrial center consistent with the goals of the RFP, port regulations, and City of Boston zoning. Those collective regulations require that the site be developed for maritime industrial only. The BPDA board has graciously extended the tentative designation several times, and at the last meeting in March, I promised to return with the terms and conditions of a proposed lease and request for final designation. I'm here today to do just that, but before discussing the lease terms, I'd like to show just a few slides of the site. As you know, I normally don't present from PowerPoint. However, in this case, I thought it best to show the site to exemplify why the lease terms are a little atypical. There we go. Whoops. So that's the site right there. It's a 7-acre site in East Boston on Condor Street. If you're not familiar with an acre in your mind's eye, if you want to picture an acre, it's roughly a football field. Football field's a little bit bigger than an acre, but that's a 7-acre site. That's a berm that goes around the site. You can drive on that berm with a car. I've done that. But you need to be careful because the difference in elevation from the berm to the middle of the site is about 15 feet. It's basically a 15-foot crater. The site is completely within the floodplain. It needs to be elevated out of the floodplain. So East Boston CDC will be elevating that berm to 19 feet to get it out of the floodplain. But in effect, we'll have a 7-acre, 19-foot deep hole when they're done. And I'm not an expert on environmental law or construction, but you can imagine bringing in the fill to fill that. It's going to take a long time, and you can't just bring in any fill that you want. It's going to be tested, et cetera, and it's going to take a few years to fill the site to get it level. And they're also going to need to repair that seawall there so that all the fill doesn't end up in the Chelsea Creek. And the cost to do that will be about $2.5 million, which will be at the sole expense of East Boston CDC. There's a few more pictures of the condition of the site now. It's not very attractive, but there it is. That's a schematic of the prospective footprint of the building, mostly industrial, maritime industrial type buildings with a little bit of elevation there. So I'm pleased to report that since November of last year, the East Boston CDC Board has voted to commit up to $1 million of their own equity towards financing the development. And East Boston Savings Bank has provided a letter of interest to fund up to $20 million towards the project. Regarding the lease, council for both BPDA and East Boston CDC will take a deep dive into the minutia of the lease, but the basic terms include the following: that 100% of the development costs will be borne by East Boston CDC, and rent will start at about 15% of market value, ramping up to 100% in 2026. Because of that early term accommodation, our successors will have the opportunity to entertain a market rate adjustment in the year 2049. We are proposing a 70-year lease. East Boston CDC will be required to meet predetermined development milestones as a condition of the lease, and BPDA will be provided copies of any report and any studies that are done on behalf of the site, and any improvements that they do to the site in the event that they do decide to leave, which we don't expect, would only benefit us going forward. East Boston CDC will also be responsible to pay all real estate taxes on the site. Here to request final designation be awarded to East Boston CDC, subject to successful execution of a lease by February 29th of 2020. That concludes my prepared statements. If you have any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question, Dennis. Do you think the people bidding on this RFP, or did we or the people bidding have an understanding of what was needed to make this site really developable, like with the fill and all that? What was
At the time, yes.
everyone knew that they would have this large project in front of them?
Yes, it was spelled out in the RFP, I believe, but I know we had site, I personally gave site tours to all the prospective developers, so we all saw the crater.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions, and a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item number 9, request authorization to award final designation to Hyperion LLC as redeveloper of parcel P-3B1 located at 1 Intervale Street in the Brunswick King Urban Renewal Area for landscape open space. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm seeking your authorization to grant final designation to Hyperion LLC as the redeveloper of parcel P3B1 in the Brunswick King Urban Renewal Area. It's located in the rear of 102 Intervale Street. It's a landlocked 1,248 square foot parcel, and it's going to be sold for landscaped open space purposes under the BPDA's abutter parcel disposition program. Three of the neighbors that live next to 102 Intervale back in '07 completed the purchase of similar parcels that were to the rear of their properties. This particular home, there was a bit of a delay because the original owner passed away in the middle of the deal, and then the home was foreclosed. In this situation, there's now a new owner. That explains why it's taken a few years to get this particular sale done. So the primary goal of the abutter program is to improve the general appearance of Boston's neighborhoods by encouraging private maintenance of land that's not suitable for development. Hyperion LLC's plans for the site will include a new fence, a small garden, removing all trash and debris, and the maintenance of the site will immediately begin upon conveyance. They will complete the proposed improvements within 365 days of the sale. Hyperion will be required to enter into a land disposition agreement with us that will restrict use of the site as an open space site in perpetuity. The BPDA will further require that the site not be sold separately from the house located at 102 Intervale Street. Therefore, we recommend that the board grant final designation to Hyperion LLC as the redeveloper of this parcel for open space purposes. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 10, request authorization to extend the tentative designation of Tenants Development Corporation for the development of a community center on parcel 22A located at 151 Lennox Street in the South End Urban Renewal Area. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, and members of the board. I'm requesting a second 90-day extension to the tentative designation originally voted at the June 2018 board for Tenants Development Corporation of Roxbury. This tentative designation was extended for 90 days, as you may recall, at the March 2019 board. The Tenants Development Corporation is proposing to develop an approximately 20,000 square foot, 4-story community center, which will include office space for its headquarters on parcel 22A, which is located at 151 Lennox Street in the South End Urban Renewal Area. TDC has made significant progress to date, as detailed in the board memo, as well as encountering some situations that will require more time and more cost. So I'm joined today by TDC's development consultant, Sharon Lowenthal. Also, TDC's executive director, Donald Ward, is here with us this evening. He's not feeling well. His voice is not doing well. So our niece Brown, who is with TDC, will also speak to us. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they'll explain some of the progress to date and what they plan to do if this 90-day extension is granted.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
I'm Sharon Lowenthal, Development Consultant to Tenants Development Corporation. Thank you, Director, members of the board, and the chairman. Basically, in the past 90-day extension, we took a refined schematic design out to a contractor, and we're some $3 million over the budget that we had initially submitted at RFP. We also ran into problems with the Phase 1 and Phase 2, that the site has urban rubble from prior demolitions and has to have groundwater remediation and disposal of soil removal off-site. Both of those are contributed to about a $3.5 million deficit over what was submitted last June. This is a new market tax credit development, and new market tax credits are currently hung up in Congress. They expire at the end of this year. And in addition, we were not politically viewed as positively in the last round, and 3 of the applicants in which TDC has preliminary submitted information were either not awarded funding or were severely cut in what was awarded to New England in the Boston area. So even though TDC has raised about $500,000 of their goal towards a project, we're going to use the next 90 days to refine the schematic design. We're going to eliminate a ground floor basketball court to take away the basement and some of the costs, the construction costs that was causing the overage, as well as a floor of office space up above. The basketball court and gymnasium will be moved to the ground floor entry level. So we need the extension to look out for additional construction costs, to refine the design, to do value engineering. And if that comes to fruition, we hope to, in the late summer, early fall, apply to MHIC for new market tax credits in the upcoming round. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? There's no questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Then a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Item number 11. Request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for consultant services for the South Boston Dorchester Avenue Transportation Plan. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Secretary Polhemus. As you know, the planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue planning effort was one of our first neighborhood planning efforts of the Walsh administration, and was informed through the Imagine Boston effort. It was a comprehensive planning effort that was approved by the board back in 2016. It really was a community-driven process that establishes planning guidelines and implementation actions to reach the plan goals. There were kind of 4 key components of the planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue. which included land use and open space, housing and economic development, mobility and connectivity, and placemaking and neighborhood character. And really one of the key recommendations in the plan for the mobility piece of it was to implement and launch a really comprehensive, in-depth transportation planning and analysis effort. So this RFP will enable us to procure a consultant to begin that process, to begin that really important work. As you may recall, the plan itself envisions a whole new transportation network for this geography, which you'll see up there. The image on the left, which is very hard to see, basically has a minimal transportation network today, especially west of Dorchester Avenue. And the plan envisions a whole new network of streets that would be built out to both kind of address some of the existing mobility connection issues within the neighborhood, and then also provide for better land use, better connectivity, and to better accommodate future development. So basically what the broad scope of the work will be is really to refine this multimodal network that we proposed in the plan. Within the plan, there's also a series of transit recommendations, some new transit service ideas, some new connection ideas. As you know, this study area is bounded by both the Broadway Red Line T Station and the Andrew T Station to the south. There's some ideas to try to add additional access to those stations, some additional sort of bus transit network ideas. And really we want to get into some really in-depth sort of technical analysis about what these streets need to look like as far as capacity is concerned, especially as we reach full build-out, and how this network needs to evolve, and specifically dimensionally what that means for the area. It, of course, will be driven by a robust public engagement process and continuing with the community process that we do with Plan South Boston Dorchester Avenue. And we anticipate that this effort will last approximately 12 months. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Jim, are there any questions on the board?
I have a question. This RFP seems like a great opportunity to seek proposals from women and minority-owned transportation companies. Have we done anything to develop a pipeline into that field to kind of make ourselves available to help people apply for RFPs such as this, in hopes of actually hiring women and minority-owned businesses to do some of this work?
Yeah, we certainly always strive for that opportunity. Those types of teams are certainly always a priority for us. There's a couple of usual suspects that actually are women-owned businesses that we anticipate will respond to this. So yeah, that is always something that we consider very highly.
Great. I know that our different departments make a lot of effort to solicit proposals, but I would hope to see that our actually hiring of women and minority-owned businesses would increase. So thank you for your efforts.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 12. Request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D, large project review of the zoning code for the construction of 72 residential units with 40 residential rental units, including 5 IDP units, that will be located at 11 Heron Street, and 32 residential condominium units, including 4 IDP units, that will be located at 26 Heron Street, 85 parking spaces, 72 bicycle storage spaces, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Aisling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. BPDA staff is pleased to recommend your approval this afternoon of a new 2-building multifamily development at 11 and 26 Heron Street in West Roxbury. As proposed by On-Site Builders and its principal, Peter Heaney, the proposed project contemplates the construction of 40 residential rental apartments at 11 Heron Street, of which 5 units will be IDP rental units, and 32 condominium units at 26 Heron Street, of which 4 units will be IDP homeownership units. Parking for 85 vehicles in total is proposed across the two buildings in ground-level garage spaces, exterior surface spaces, and with the possibility for additional on-street parking. At present, Heron Street is an unimproved private way open to public travel. The proponent has committed to approximately $375,000 in improvements to Heron Street and the surrounding streets, which will address many existing issues for residents of the immediate area. The proponent worked closely with staff of the BPDA, Boston Transportation Department, and Public Improvement Commission on urban design and planning considerations for the project site and associated improvements. BPDA staff looks forward to continued collaboration with the proponent as the project design and associated improvements are further progressed. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the members of the 11 and 26 Heron Street Impact Advisory Group for their time and service through the course of the proposed project's Article 80 review. Lucio Trabucco, project architect, will now provide some additional information. Both I and the development team will be happy to answer any questions you may have at the conclusion of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Let me start with the existing condition. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because I just want to illustrate the scope of the work. The rectangle, red rectangle shapes are the site. The one on the lower right-hand corner is 11 Aaron Street. The upper right-hand corner is basically 26 Aaron Street. Aaron Street is a dead-end street. If I can point, yeah, it's a dead-end street. It's only accessible by Washington Street, which is a major Boston City artery. There's a ledge at the end of the street. The street is in a really bad condition. The asphalt is cracking and deteriorating. There's no sidewalk. There's no vegetation. Basically, just it's a rundown street. In addition to that, the street, this whole area is into a valley. The highest point is on Washington Street. There's a flat area around this area here, which is 14 feet below Washington Street. And it's also, as you go up, goes up to this area, which is also 14 feet above this area here. On either side of the street, there's a difference of 8 feet. So this is basically just a valley into the area. The surrounding neighborhood consists of multifamily development pretty much in this area. The single-family development on Grove Street, and also in the back of the property. Again, there's no access to the back of the property. It's a dead-end street. There's 3 single-family residents. There's a one-story industrial building and a 3-family unit right in this area. This is just a street, just an existing slide, just to illustrate the condition of Aaron Street. The proposed site plan, we are taking, there's a single-family residence here, would be demolished. Pretty much the other is open land. There's also single-family development on this side as well. What we are proposing is to regrade the whole street, Aaron Street, eliminating low areas as much as we can to, so that the water does not pond, and in the winter months it ices. There'll be, again, full sidewalks on both sides of the street, be vegetation by locating trees along the street. There's also additional vegetation along both buildings. There'll be new street lights, and also in addition to that, all new utility lines going from Aaron Street to Washington Street. This is just an illustrating site plan to better show you the improvements on Aaron Street. Again, there'll be a new street, new sidewalks, and also there's some parking, surface parking on both buildings. Okay, 26 Aaron Street, 26 Aaron Street, the site is 22,787 square feet. There'll be 32 units, residential units, 12 of which are single bedroom, 850 square feet, and 20 two-bedroom units, 1,100 square feet each. There'll be additional 24 interior parking spaces under the structure and 9 surface parking. There's also an additional there's also additional 5 parking spaces on on street for to service the building. The parking level again, it will be parking, but also in addition to that, there will be bicycle storage areas on each parking stall. There will also be 6 charging stations for electrical cars. And also there'll be like a bicycle storage on each building. 11, similar details as 26. The site is 29,275 square feet. There's 40 units. There are 12 one-bedroom units, 850 square feet each. And also there are 28 two-bedroom units, 1,100 square feet each. There's a 33 parking on the lower level, and 9 on-street parking and 5 surface parking. And again, there will be the same charging station as well as bicycle racks on the parking level. The details. The material we're trying to use is basically common materials you see in residential structures. It'd be clapboards is the main material, and also we're introducing these bays to offset the horizontal linearity of the building, just to get some vertical units, and they'll be all made up of panels and composite panels, and also windows are double hung windows. All materials you see in the single family, two-family residential construction. The main entrance off Aaron Street. And again, the base of the building will be all vegetated, and brand new sidewalk, and then there's access to the parking will be via the surface parking area. These are some of the streets views, just to give you a feeling of what we are proposing. Again, it's a new sidewalk, new streets, and you can see on your right, that's the proposed structures. It's on the right. Again, there's just just renders, just get a feel of what we are proposing in the area. That's 26 with the surface parking. That's also 26 again, just to give you a feel. And also, in addition to that, we also, in each building, will have open space area that the tenant can take advantage of. And these spaces can be, recreational spaces, but also there are spaces that we are proposing that will facilitate interaction between the tenants of both buildings. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order. Whoops.
There's 2 residents here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't a public hearing though, so we're not able to,
So we've been ignored this whole
well, hold on a second, we've had public hearings and meetings in the.
We were never notified of public
Okay.
hearings.
I want you to speak to the project manager afterward.
We've tried.
Oh, so you've spoken with him? Okay, that's, okay, so this isn't a public hearing anyway, so we're gonna move on with this.
Mr. Chairman, I can
Yes.
address that issue. This public meetings for this project were advertised as due course for the agency, published in the local newspapers. Email blasts were sent out to all subscribers of West Roxbury Neighborhood Updates. Elected officials and their staff were notified. Normal process for BPDA public meetings.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions from the board, then a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion passed. Thank you. Item number 13, request authorization to issue a certification of approval pursuant to Article 80, Section 80E-6 of the Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the construction of 18 residential condominium units, 1 commercial and 1 retail space, and 30 off-street parking spaces located at 45 Spring Street, and to take all related actions. Michael.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. Michael Sinatra, BPDA Project Manager. The project before you is 45 Spring Street in West Roxbury. It is an as-of-right project that is actually currently under construction as a 13-unit home ownership building. The proposal is to create 5 additional units for a total of 18. However, even with this addition, the project will still remain zoning compliant and therefore will not trigger IDP. The gross square footage will be 28,000. The project will also include 32 parking spaces as well as some ground floor commercial space, along with 4,678 square feet of open space. The construction costs are approximately $4.5 million. Small project review application was filed with the BPDA on April 29, 2019. One public meeting was held on May 15, 2019, and was lightly attended, and the comment period closed on May 31, 2019. At this time, I will turn it over to the development team to go over their presentation in more detail, after which we would be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. My name is James Christopher of RCA LLC. with the project architects in association with Rapp General Contracting and Howard Robinson of Rapp General Contracting and La Rosa Development. Our proposal is for 18 residential units. The building also includes a small commercial space and a ground level retail space, 18 bike storage spaces. The proposal is to combine 4 parcels, combined total of 28,000 square feet. The demolition of a single-family house and a commercial building. Here is the existing site, which abuts Star Market, and this is Spring Street here. The building is actually in the transition area between the commercial end of Spring Street and the residential portion. This is the existing conditions as it was. Our proposal is to restore the fieldstone wall at the front of the property, a small retaining wall, and to construct a 3-story residential building. This is the front elevation of the building. The building is 3 stories. It consists of a glass curtain wall in between 2 towers. There's an open courtyard in between the 2 buildings. This is the broadside elevation. Currently, the permit allows for construction of the building up until that second bow here. This is the new building that will be added if this project should receive approval today. This is the rear elevation, which shows the access and egress to a rear open space, which is illustrated on the site plan. This is the garage space, which houses 25 interior parking spaces with 5 additional surface parking spaces. The building also has balconies for various units carved out for additional outdoor space for those units. This shows the open space. Currently, there are 2 curb cuts on Spring Street, which will remain and will provide access to the rear surface parking, which is cut off on the upper right-hand corner there. The left curb cut shows access to the interior garage parking, and that level in between the 2 buildings is the open courtyard, which allows for open space and windows all the way around each portion of the building. We're still working with the BPDA planners to program the outdoor space and the surface parking. This shows the interior garage spaces as well as the retail space that was added at grade at the request of the BPDA and the neighborhood planning. With that, I will turn it over to the board.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to just go out of order a little bit now and ask to see if I can have a brief director's report. I know we want to have a few words from the executive director, so Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I'd like to acknowledge and celebrate the work and now the retirement of our own David Carlson, the Deputy Director of Urban Design here at the Boston Planning and Development Agency. Later this month, David will retire. He started at this agency as an intern 35 years ago. Wow. He's been a terrific colleague, friend, and mentor to a multitude of staff who have passed through the agency. David has had a significant impact on making Boston the first-class city that it is, approaching design issues and problems with fairness, intelligence, and a strong commitment to excellence. In rooms full of creative designers, experienced developers, world-class architects, and opinionated people generally, David is the listener. David always listens to everything in every perspective before offering a solution that benefits both Boston, its citizens, while maintaining the integrity of the project being discussed and improving it. David has served as the executive director of the Boston Civic Design Commission, the BCDC, a panel of eminent architectural design professionals charged with the responsibility of reviewing all the large design projects that you see before you every month. David has also overseen the construction of the unique physical model of our city, built to scale just down the hall from where we're sitting. It's a great attraction and a learning tool for students and professionals across the city and even across the globe. We have multiple international visits almost weekly. As you may recall, 2 years ago in 2017, David was a Henry L. Shattuck Award winner for excellence in public service. The award was presented to him by the Boston Municipal Research Bureau. David's also well known throughout City Hall and throughout the city for his encyclopedic knowledge of our city, and he's an invaluable resource for staff across all departments of the agency and any Bostonian who is interested in our work. To hear David talk about our city and its neighborhoods, especially the Charlestown Navy Yard, in which he's had intimate experience and familiarity. Listening to David's narratives are like getting the most unique and interesting of history lessons, full of unusual anecdotes and facts not to be found elsewhere. Speaking of strange and unusual and unique facts that a lot of people here don't know, David is a gifted stained glass artist and worked in the field professionally before he arrived at this agency. In fact, the stained glass repairs at Emmanuel Church are an example of some of his work. David's also the last remaining, and this is really the strange one, he's also the last remaining staff member at the Boston Planning and Development Agency who attended the original Woodstock Music Festival in New York, the 50th anniversary of which is coincidentally being celebrated this August. Those were the days, David.
Got my ticket.
The Boston Planning Development Agency and the City of Boston and the people of Boston have been fortunate to have such an outstanding and committed person as David Carlson dedicate almost his entire career to making it the beautiful, well-designed, historically rich, authentic city it is today. David's work always respected and reflected Boston's special place in the world and Boston's special place in history. So now to you, David, thank you. Thank you for your commitment to excellence. I congratulate you on behalf of all your friends here at the Boston Planning Agency. Congratulate your family, your wife, Eleanor, your children, Ian and Hannah, and your 2 grandchildren on your retirement. We wish you well. Thank you, and Godspeed.
Congratulations, David. I was going to say something about a long, strange trip it's been.
I got it too, Tim.
All right.
You could really work that Woodstock thing for quite a while before you ran out of material.
Tim, sing it for us.
Oh, no. Item number 14, requests authorization to issue a determination waiving further review pursuant to Section 80A-6.2 of the zoning code in connection with the second notice of project change for the Innovation Square at Northern Avenue projects located at 6 Tide Street, and to substitute 10,000 square feet of retail, restaurant, service space for research and development space, and to add up to 45 on-site parking spaces to serve Phase 2, and to take all related actions.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. Earlier this afternoon, the board received a preview of this recommended action from Dennis Davis with respect to the lease assignment, creation of additional parking, and the approval of approximately 10,000 square feet of first-floor restaurant and service space in Phase 2 of the Innovation Square project at 6 Tide Street in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. On December 27, 2013, the Boston Redevelopment Authority issued a scoping determination waiving further review for the Innovation Square project following approval from the BRA board. A first notice of project change was filed on July 28, 2016, contemplating several changes to the originally approved project, including dividing the project into 2 phases, increasing on-site accessory parking for the project from 60 spaces to 84 spaces, and inclusion of research and development use components in the project's floor plans. As outlined in the Director's determination issued on September 9, 2016, in connection with the first NPC, Phase 1 of the Innovation Square project was approved to consist of a 4-story building of approximately 121,299 square feet with 84 accessory parking spaces, and Phase 2 was outlined to consist of 1 or more 4-story buildings with approximately 238,353 square feet of gross floor area. The BPDA received a second notice of project change on March 15, 2019, proposing 2 minor changes to Phase 2 of the Innovation Square project, as described in the originally approved project and later amended by the first NPC. The second NPC before you this afternoon proposes the substitution of approximately 10,000 square feet of ground floor research and development space for local retail, restaurant, and/or services space, and the addition of up to 45 on-site accessory parking spaces for use in first service of Phase 2. Steve Faber from Related B will be happy to say a few words now. I'll be happy to answer any questions, as will the development team at the conclusion of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Oh, sorry. Joe, project architect.
Hi. I'm going to share a few comments about the project at this point. I like to open up my presentations with this image. This is a corner image of Phase 1, and the successes of that will really roll into what you're going to see right now of Phase 2. Much of the DNA of this project will be part of Phase 2. So this gives you a good example. The overall massing, Phase 1 is on the right-hand side, Phase 2 is on the left-hand side, and you have Northern Ave on the lower left-hand side screen with Tide Street on the right-hand side. It's a 4-story structure. It's really replicating the Phase 1, doubling it, and then having connecting portions at the midpoint. And what that does very nicely for this project is sets up a nice entry point, a lobby, a courtyard that brings natural light into the research spaces itself, and it also sets up on the back end of the building a nice entrance, which really creates a lot of connectivity with the campus itself. Here's our overall site plan. Phase 1 on the right-hand side, Phase 2 on the left-hand side. Main entrance is at the entrance, right at the midpoint of Northern Ave, right there, anchored by retail space on either side. We have some tenant spaces on the upper portion and lower portions, and sort of the lighter heather color on the upper portion is some of the amenity spaces, pre-function, conference room, etc. The gray space, back of house, on the right-hand side, on the upper portion of the building right there, we have the loading dock, which has its access point off of Access Road, and its associated spaces with that. On the lower end of the building, along Tide Street, we have the access for vehicular car entrance right there that goes to one level below this level. This is one of my favorite drawings of the overall project. You can see the Phase 1 on the right-hand side, the Phase 2 on the left-hand side. Like I mentioned before, the detailing of the curtain wall system, the storefront system that occurs at the ground level, as well as the precast that was used for Phase 1 will be replicated for Phase 2. This is the front entrance along Northern Ave. This is the elevation along Tide Street, so Phase 1 in this case is on the left-hand side. The new Phase 2 is on the right-hand side. And then this is the back elevation of the project. some nice perspectives that give you a sense of character of mass and the architectural materials that are being used right here. This is the corner of Northern Ave and Tide. And the building is, has been elevated 4 feet to address sea level rise. So that explains the nice integration of steps and ramps that gets you in a very nice way to the front door of the building. As we mentioned before, there's some retail activity that occurs on the first floor that really activate that public realm. Here's another shot a little bit closer to that main entrance along Northern Ave. And if you walk into the front door, you'll be presented with this image right in here. This is the main lobby space. It goes from a one-story space to a two-story space and unveils this great view into that courtyard, which is going to have a wonderful sort of seating, interactive component for the space itself, as well as bringing natural light into this building. So that concludes my overall presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 15. Request authorization to terminate the existing affordable rental housing agreement and restrictions for the 420 West Broadway project and to enter into an affordable housing agreement consisting of 5 IDP homeownership units. John.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. 420 West Broadway in South Boston was originally approved by the BRA board on March 16th of 2017. The previous owner, West Broadway Theater LLC, received approval to construct a 6-story, 44,000 gross square feet mixed-use development containing 42 rental units, 42 garage parking spaces, and a 1,350 square foot commercial retail space. The new owner, BP Broadway LLC, acquired ownership and development rights for the approved project on July 17th of 2018. BP Broadway LLC filed a notice of project change on April 26th of this year, proposing to change the under construction project from rental units to home ownership condominium units. The project's IDP commitment requires 5 affordable units, which will now be created as home ownership units. A BPDA-sponsored public meeting was held on May 20th at the Library Center in South Boston. It was advertised on the South Boston Online and South Boston Today newspapers, and the comment period concluded on May 31st. So I would like to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Item number 16. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval pursuant to Article 80, Section 80E-6 of the Small Project Review Zoning Code for the construction of 25 residential units, including 3 IDP units, bicycle storage, and 10,710 square feet of ground space and second-floor retail space located at 2 through 10 Maverick Street, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed project is located in Maverick Square in East Boston, directly across the street from the MBTA Maverick Station. The project site consists of one parcel that is approximately 7,720 square feet of land. It's currently used as a commercial parking lot. The proponent, MG2 Group LLC, will make is making a community contribution payment of $40,000. $20,000 will fund improvements to the public realm around the project site in Maverick Square, and a $20,000 contribution will fund transportation infrastructure improvements in East Boston. The proponent filed an Article 80 application on February 28th. The public meeting was held on March 28th at the East Boston Health Center. And located on 250 Sumner Street. The meeting was advertised in East Boston Times on March 13th, and the comment period concluded on April 5th. The primary concern with the community was that there's no parking associated with this proposal. There were a few people at the public meeting that didn't like that, but there were also people there that countered that and had no problem with there being no parking associated with this proposal, considering that it is a transit-oriented development. At this time, I would like to introduce Attorney Richard Lins to further the presentation. Richard?
Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary and Director Golden. Richard Lins, 245 Sumner Street, East Boston, on behalf of the petitioner, MG2 Group. Mr. Chairman, we look at this project as the next chapter in the revitalization and redevelopment of Maverick Square in East Boston. As John indicated, this is a site that's about 7,700 square feet, which is presently used for open-air parking. Our proposal would propose a project that builds on transit-oriented development principles for a mixed-use building that contains both retail as well as a restaurant use, along with 25 units of housing. Of those 25 units, 3 would be IDP units. There's a number of projects in and around the Maverick Square area that are either ongoing or have been recently approved, and this will be one further project which will hopefully build upon that revitalization. As you can see from the neighborhood overview here, the parking lot sits in direct proximity to the Maverick T station, within about 30 to 40 feet of the entrance to the Maverick T station. And as John indicated, one of the concerns that was raised was the lack of parking. We did hear from a number of community members that putting parking on this site would actually defeat the purpose of higher density development and the type of development that's happening in around Maverick Square, and therefore there was a lot of support for this type of project that we're proposing. Just some context photos to show what the existing conditions look like as you approach Maverick Square from Sumner Street, and then within Maverick Square looking back at the lot from the MBTA station. I want to include this slide as well. This shows a little bit of history about the site. This site was the former site of the Lyceum Hall, which is a historic meeting hall in East Boston. Immediately adjacent to that was the Luongo restaurant, which tragically in 1942 took the lives of 6 Boston firefighters. There's a memorial located in Maverick Square that MG2 has agreed to work towards the maintenance and preservation of to remember the 6 firefighters who lost their life. Shortly after this fire, the Lyceum Hall was torn down and it's remained vacant as a vacant parking lot ever since. So I thought it was just important to give a little bit of context about what was on this site previously. At this time, I'd like to ask D'Artagnan Brown from Embark Studio to come up and walk through the building program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richie. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. D'Artagnan Brown from Embark. So as Richie mentioned, the location across the Maverick T station here. Along Maverick Street, we have direct entry to a retail ground floor full use. At the corner of Maverick and Sumner, we have retail entrance into a dedicated restaurant on the 2nd floor, which I'll show you. And along Sumner Street, as we head towards the residential, we have direct access to the residential units above. On the 2nd floor, full floor plate for restaurant use. Building elevation, 2 stories activated in glass, which I'll show you in a rendering, with 4 levels of residential above. This is a side view along Sumner Street, transitioning to the residential neighborhood. So this image here is kind of a rendering done in the evening. So our goal with the design of this building is to really play off the activity in Maverick Square, so create a strong retail and restaurant presence. The first 2 floors done in a curtain wall glass system. As we transition to the residential neighborhood, we're playing off of architectural elements to 2 to 3 stories done in brick. Along the front of the building that is opposite the T itself, we have a zinc copper metal cladding system, which is the 3 stories of residential, and the 4th story is stepped back, part of the massing and design moves we worked with the community. Out of the 25 units, we have 3 studio units around 500 square feet, 11 1-bedroom units around 700 square feet, 10 2-bedroom units around 1,020 square feet average, and then 1 3-bedroom unit at 1,260 square feet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That conclude the presentation?
That's us.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
Does this rendering include the other project up at the end of the street there?
The one recently approved at the corner of Chelsea and Maverick Square, there's
Yeah, the
all
one with
commercial,
the,
commercial.
one with the clock.
Yeah, that's actually on the opposite side of the square further down.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item number 617, request authorization to enter into an affordable rental housing agreement and restrictions for the 12 Rock Hill Road project consisting of 2 IDP units. Michael.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. This project is an IDP-only project, so your only vote this afternoon is to approve the affordable housing agreement. The project, located at 12 Rock Hill Road in Jamaica Plain, is currently occupied by 3 one-story garages on 3 separate adjacent parcels. The proposal is for a 14-unit residential rental building with 18 parking spaces. Since it is below the thresholds of 15 units and 20,000 square feet, it does not trigger Article 80 small project review. The project is not located within the JP Rock study area, so our regular IDP regulations apply. We have designated 2 units as IDP. As outlined in your board memos, both units will be 2 bedrooms and will be rented at 70% AMI. We will be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 18, request authorization to enter into an affordable housing agreement for the 6 Poitras Street project consisting of 2 IDP units. Tim.
Hi, thank you, members of the board. This, just like the last agenda item, is for an IDP only. This is a 14-unit home ownership project at 64 Poitras Street in Hyde Park. And our only vote today is to require us to do an affordable housing agreement for 2 home ownership units. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved. Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. I'm going to step out for a short time, and I'm going to have Mr. Moynihan be the chairperson pro temp. And I will return. Pro temp, sorry. Pro temp. We're going to be on number 19, and then we'll be taking a break about 5:30, and I'll return.
Is this it? Then we take a break?
Number 19, no, we'll go here, 19, 20, and then just keep going until you hit the, don't do these two. This is the public.
Here, here.
Yep, and then the other ones. If you have it.
Number 19, request approval of a conformatory order of taken with respect to a portion of parcel P3 and parcel P-3H in the Campus High Urban Renewal Plan Area, project number R-129 for the Tremont Crossing Development Project, approval of an easement agreement with the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, and approval for the director to co-petition the Public Improvement Commission, all in connection with site preparation for the Tremont Crossing Development Project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Polhemus. As you all know, we have granted final designation to the development team of P3 Partners in relation to the creation of the Tremont Crossing project on parcel P3. Since that time, in April of 2019, the development team has been working on the very important site preparation components of the project. You'll recall that in December of 2018, one of the primary pieces of work that the development team undertook was receipt of approvals from the Boston Water and Sewer Commission for the components which include the proposed relocation of the sewer lines, I should say, and utilities that will be underneath the proposed development. That approval then allowed for us to, again, have confidence in the team's ability to make those improvements in accordance with water and sewer requirements. An important part of the site configuration work as well is the work following those approvals with the Commonwealth's Land Court and the appropriate deregistration of components of the parcel that enable us to look at the creation of certain streets, etc. And the item before us today relates to not only that deregistration of portions of the site, but also the creation of the easements with the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, which allow us as landowner to work with the development team appropriately for the creation of the project. I will say, just to give you a little bit of context about what this all means, the somewhat dotted lines show where the various sewer relocation components will take place. One of the primary significant easements, this is an existing easement, rather this is the existing sewer line. The proposal for the relocation is to basically go around the perimeter of the proposed building. One of the primary easements which is of importance is this right here, the sort of diagonal line that is being shown via the laser printer, rather the laser pointer. Our ability to move forward with that particular easement with water and sewer, and then subsequently to work with the Public Improvements Commission, will be granted by this particular vote. I will stop my remarks there and acknowledge the presence of members of the development team, including Mr. Daniel Bork from Bowler Engineering, who can answer any technical questions regarding this request.
Any questions?
Is this of the same size as the existing sewer line that runs through there?
Correct. There are no changes to the order of magnitude of the line, just its location.
Was there any opportunity to address issues of resilience or potential flooding in the relocation of this line?
That is a good question. I'm going to defer to Mr. Bork if he can. I will say, as you mentioned the question around flooding and other environmental, we are working with the city's interagency green building committee on the elements around environmental and the various protections that are going to be important as part of this process as well. So, but I will also defer to Mr. Burke for other technical questions.
Daniel Burke, Bowler Engineering. As far as the resiliency, this is a sewer project. It's going to be made of reinforced concrete. So Boston Water and Sewer is very concerned about design life of their pipe. It's a much improved situation when compared to the existing brick sewer. So as far as that goes, yeah, they were very happy with the design presented to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe what Ted was going there too, capacity has not been a problem with the existing pipeline?
It has not,
Yeah,
and,
okay.
and they reviewed the calculations as far as flow and capacity, and they were satisfied with that.
Very good. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Urban Renewal South Cove. Request approval of the minor modifications to the South Cove Urban Renewal Plan with respect to parcel R-3A-2, located at the corner of Washington Street and Marginal Road in the South Cove Urban Renewal Area, and to execute and deliver a land disposition agreement and deed to the City of Boston for parcel R-3A-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, and members of the board. This vote is another vote in the series of votes we've been doing to prepare the site that will be the permanent location for the Josiah Quincy Upper School, the new development of that. Last week we had done a confirmatory order of taking vote, and there have been several other votes concerning easements, street takings, things of that nature. This vote is a minor modification to the South Cove Urban Renewal Plan for the two parcels that you stated, Mr. Chairman. It is accounting for the allowed use being changed to the urban renewal plan. So this will add the uses of public, institutional, and/or residential, which will permit a school to be constructed there. It also will make the maximum floor area ratio that's listed in the urban renewal plan to be 8. And that will make it's another step in making this site ready for the construction. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the board? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so that ends, what's that? 23?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Administration and Finance, request authorization to disperse $876,250 from the Boston College Neighborhood Improvement Fund to 3 nonprofits to enter into a grant agreement with the 3 nonprofits and to take all related action.
Good afternoon again, members of the board. As you know, we have 2 grant funds, one with Boston College, one with Harvard University. They were created back in about 2013 in association with those institutions' master plans. I've been before you before with grants. Happens that I have both of them before you for approval this evening. Boston College, we have some others pending that remain to be determined, but we wanted to come before you sooner rather than later with the ones that have been recommended for approval. Just a note on the very significant grant to Boston Parks and Recreation. That's for McKinney Playground, and we have worked extensively with Parks as they have advanced their master planning for McKinney, Rogers, some of the other parks in the area, and determined that that was really the best location for a significant grant that, in addition to the city's capital funds, would allow that project to proceed and represent a greater investment of the park than would otherwise be possible. That's similar to what the Harvard Fund did with Smith Field that was very successful and allowed that to be the kind of project that it is soon to open this summer. So just a note, since that's such a significant monetary amount, I wanted to make sure you understood the background there.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So we're going to keep going to 24. 24, request authorization to disperse $633,413 from the Harvard Austin Public Realm Flexible Fund to 9 nonprofits to enter into a grant agreement with the 9 nonprofits and to take all related actions.
Thank you again. Again, you've seen this grant fund before. We've had some really successful grants to neighborhood parks. We're pursuing public art. Something new that's noteworthy in this particular request is that we've been working with Boston Housing Authority to look at ways of funding public realm improvements at Faneuil Gardens in a way that will benefit the 1,000 residents who live there, but also the entire surrounding neighborhood. So that's kind of an exciting new direction for the fund. And just one note about the public art item at the end of the list. We don't necessarily expect to disperse all of that. We're working through, at least in the short term, we're working through a lot of issues that relate to insurance and so on and so forth. It's a great learning process. It has led us to work with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture to fund the creative placemaking study, which we think will be an additional opportunity to not only learn about some better ways of doing public art in the city, but also to actually pave the way for additional commissioning and installation of public art specifically in that neighborhood. So this is all kind of an ongoing effort and learning process, and but I wanted to make sure we had the authorization to fund that either in a small amount, or if we have the opportunity sooner rather than later to actually fund the art installation at the intersection of Franklin and Lincoln Street, which is a great gateway into the neighborhood that could use some enlivening.
Very good. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, wait, question?
This public art seems to incorporate landscaping as much as objects, and I wonder, which is great, and I wonder if the placemaking study in some way, shape, or form combines what we think of as art with what we might think of as landscape and placemaking.
So the placemaking study, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture has scoped that out. I'm happy to send you a copy of their proposal so you can understand it in more depth. But the idea is really to identify those opportunities within the neighborhood to install either public art, as we think of it more traditionally, or other placemaking opportunities, or what they call placekeeping, so preserving some of the characteristics and the quality of the place. And so to look at that at the neighborhood scale, where are the opportunities, what are the goals, but also to really take us to the point where we have identified some specific sites and opportunities where this fund, maybe in conjunction with other sources of funding, but this fund could then actually be in a position to relatively quickly commission an intervention and have it installed.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Do you have a question, Carol? What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gerald. 25, request authorization to approve the Boston Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 20 budget. Michelle?
Microphone problems again. Hello, members of the board. We gave a presentation earlier in the EDIC section of this meeting, and so we now just need the BRA vote. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Personnel? Siobhan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Madam Secretary. We just have one BRA agenda item, which is a travel item for your consideration, and the details are listed on the board memo. That's Laura Melly, the Real Estate Department. Thank you.
Any questions? It's the pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Contractual?
I move we pay our bills.
Second.
And Brian's already given his director's update, I believe, right?
I'm going to take our vote.
on the
Oh.
contractuals.
Motion to
So moved.
approve the contractual.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Brian, did you want to add some more, or were you, when you did your update?
Nothing further, Mr. Monahan.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So we're going to take a break for a little bit, at least till 5:30, and I don't know, I'm sure Tim will be right back or not. So motion to adjourn for the time being.
I move we take a temporary adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
So
Aye.
Aye.
Nice job, Mike.
All right, we did it.
This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the development plan for Planned Development Area Number 123, consisting of the renovation of 20 Clinton Street, Dock Square Garage. This hearing was duly advertised on May 29, 2019 in the Boston Herald. In a BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so, again, under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Mr. Sinatra will now present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. The project before you is the 20 Clinton Street Dock Square Garage project. The existing site is a 7-story garage with 698 parking spaces on a site of approximately 51,027 square feet. The proposal is to build an additional 7-story, 243,500 square foot residential building with another 3,000 square feet of ground floor residential, which will be open to the Greenway, as well as 15,000 square feet of ground floor restaurant space. The project is also pursuing a PDA. The project consists of 209 homeownership units, 27 of which will be IDP. The garage will remain, but the parking space count will decrease from 698 to 450, some of which will be made available to residents of the building. The garage will also be designed to handle valet and mechanical lifts. The total gross square footage will be 420,000, and the total FAR will be 8.2. The height will be up to 11 stories and 124 feet. Total development cost will be $140 million. The project notification form was filed on February 16, 2018. The comment period was extended in response to requests from the public, and it closed on May 2, 2018. The PDA was filed on January 7, 2019, and the comment period for the PDA filing closed on February 22, 2019. 5 total meetings were held, 3 were public and 2 were IAG. The IAG has expressed their full support for this project. Before I turn it over to the development team, I just want to quickly draw your attention to a quick slide that provides some planning context to explain how this project fits within the Greenway District Planning Study. A 2-year process was undertaken, which was completed in 2010, to examine how to preserve the newly created Greenway, activate the broader public realm, and to ensure the long-term value of the public's investment by shaping development to maximize the quality of the parks. As a parking garage with multiple inactive edges, the Dock Square Garage was identified as an opportunity site. As you will see shortly in the presentation, the development team has made a commitment to activate these edges in the spirit of the Greenway study with the creation of the ground floor retail. At this time, I will turn it over to the development team to go through their presentation in more detail, after which we would be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Board and Director Golden. I'm here on behalf of the development team at Fortis Properties. I'd like to do a special thank to the IAG for this project, and also to Michael and Sinatra and Elizabeth and John Greeley. This has been, this is a very sensitive location. We've had numerous meetings and discussions on this project, and we believe that at the end of the day, this is a much better building and project than we started with. We're excited about the way it's going to kind of fill the eyesore within the Greenway once this project is developed. As Mike mentioned, we're going to have 209 units, 27 affordable units, which will be on site. We'll be able to increase our retail activity. Right now, we only have the Hard Rock restaurant, and we're going to bring that retail all the way around to the Greenway. Additionally, and more importantly, we'll be keeping the parking garage open. One of the things we found out is how important this garage is for Faneuil Hall and other retail stores in the neighborhood, and we were looking at being able to maintain the garage, build this building in different segments, so we'll always have the garage open to maintain the parking needs of our abutters. And lastly, I'd like to pass this off to Jared Ackerman. He's going to get into the guidelines in the PDA before we pass it off to BK Boley at Stantec. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I'm the project attorney, Jay Eigerman. So this is the Government Center / Markets District, Article 45. There are 5 sub-areas within that district that were already designated for possible planned development areas. This is planned development area Roman numeral 3 that was identified, and it's about 1.2 acres. As far as the limitations on a PDA at this site, there are no limitations on the use, and you heard the mix. The parking garage, of course, has been there since 1979. It's an old urban renewal project, and there is still an LDA on the property. On the dimensions, what the code says is it has to be guided by the Greenway District Planning Study Use and Development Guidelines. And so that's where a lot of the effort went with BCDC, and the architects will speak to that. For example, the height guideline, although not binding, was set at 125, I believe, and we're at 124.8. So with that, I'll turn over to BK and I'll take you through the details, but I'm available to answer any legal questions on the details. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, Director Goldman, members of the board, thank you very much for having us this evening. So our project is the Dock Square Garage, and as you can see, it's one of the remaining underloved and unembellished sites along the Rose Kennedy Greenway. It sits directly opposite where the tunnel boxes come up. It has wide, barren sidewalks, and we expect to reclad the building, reduce it in size of the existing garage, and I'll show you how we're going to do that, and then put an addition on the top of it. This is a great image from the early 1920s. Boston was just emerging as a 20th century city. You can see the site, which is on the right-hand side of the image, was surrounded by a network of various sized, tightly packed buildings. On the left-hand side, at the base of the Customs House Tower, which rises 500 feet above grade, you can see the emerging financial district. Some buildings had already reached up to about 130 and 140 feet in that area. And then in 1975, the Dock Square was essentially a surface parking lot. You can see it nestled up against the elevated on the left-hand side of that image. Well, you can see in 1975, the entire area was a surface parking lot. What's interesting is there is really no delineation between pedestrians and cars in this area. You can see that Volvo on the bottom right-hand side stalking that woman in the street just to the left. It's ironic that the Volvo at the time was the safest car in America, obviously only if you were in it. Here is another image in the early 1980s, and you can see the Dock Square Garage on the left side image, and then right center at the base of the Customs House Tower on the right-hand side. On the bottom left, you can see by the 80s, we were beginning to have a sense of pedestrian appreciation. We had signalized crosswalks. They were a little bit more clear. And so we're beginning to have this sense of public realm improvements. This is the Dock Square Garage today, still sitting opposite the tunnel boxes. You can see it's a sad creature, a leftover from a kind of industrial era, and it had been hidden for 20 years by the elevated. This aerial image that shows an expanded view of the Rose Kennedy Greenway shows how it is really a black hole as you're coming across there as a pedestrian. The sidewalks, as I mentioned, are barren, and then the connection to Faneuil Hall from the North End Park is also quite sad. Here are some images of the sidewalks around the building. The upper left, it's quite deep. The upper right, you can see there is a grade change, essentially an areaway that was created when the big dig was made because the grade was raised in that area. Clinton Street in the lower left has missing trees, and then the Greenway, there is no street furnishings, so people sit on the curb to make calls for their Uber. The building, I don't have to mention, was never on the front cover of Architectural Record, so we're going to cover that up. And we're going to do it by essentially eliminating the first 2 levels of the garage that we're going to demolish. We're going to replace those with a 12-foot high level of stacker, double stacker parking. So what that does is it enables us to have the parking phase out sometime in the future and then easily convert that level to an office use. We are putting in new windows along the edge all the way around the side of the building, so it will always look activated. The terrace that rises up on top of those is at 54 feet, so it's lower than the 76 feet of the existing garage, and then our 6 levels of residential rise up above that. This is a plan of the public improvements that we are proposing, and you can see, as Michael mentioned, on the right-hand side of the image, we are cutting into the existing garage ramp to create retail to activate the base of the building on the greenway side. There wraps around to a residential entrance that is opposite Haymarket Square, and then other retail entrances where we're filling in the sunken courtyard that is there now. Here is a blow-up of that image up at the corner of the Greenway and North Street, and you can see the retail entrance there, new planting, new furnishing. These are the type of uses. We're looking for kind of small, high-quality retailers in those areas. And then on the opposite side, we have an expanded kind of park area with a reflecting pond on the left, new planting areas. So we think it's going to be really quite nice. Here are some images from our landscape architect of the context of materials that are based upon what's already existing at the North End Park and the Armenian Park that they did. And then here are some images of the building itself. We have warmer toned materials on the upper portions of the building in punch window form that start to mimic the feel and the warmth of the buildings along North Street. And then as we wrap up and around, you can see that double-story stacker piece on the left-hand side that would eventually become office. This shows the terrace that is facing Quincy Market, and we oriented it that way with suggestions from the community in the BCDC and the BPDA so that we'd have a more variated height along Quincy Market. The project you cannot really see from any point within Quincy Market except one piece at the entrance of Faneuil Hall, and then if you're on the far end of the rotunda, you can see a very small glimpse of it on the far side. So in closing, we think we have a great project. We've improved the public realm and the sidewalk condition, not just kind of along our edges of the building, but hopefully in the future directly along the Greenway itself. We are fully compliant in the height with the Greenway guidelines. We have an activated edge at the base of the building and all the way up the building. So we really think it's going to be a benefit to the public realm and general improvements along the Rose Kennedy Greenway. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Go ahead, you can clap. So I'll hold off any questions from the board until after we have the public hearing part of this. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step right up, state your name, and speak in favor of the proposal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board, Minor Perez representing the Carpenters Union. On behalf of hundreds of our members that live and work throughout the city of Boston, I want to go on record of support and kudos to the developer for doing a tremendous job outreach into the community. Thanks.
Great, okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dave Kadish. I'm a neighbor. I live down the street on Broad Street. I'd like to give full support for this project. I've been following it the whole way around. I think it's beautiful. And in a city as Boston with such great history, but also one that's progressive, forward-thinking, and cutting edge, a building that respects the past but also looks forward to the future, I think is something that I'd like to speak for a generation that's very excited to see. And I would urge that the board can approve this tonight so we can fill that void on the Greenway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. My name is Joseph O'Malley. I'm the General Manager of the Faneuil Hall Marketplace and a member of the Impact Advisory Group for this project. Speaking on behalf of the merchants and businesses in the marketplace, I would like to go on record in strong support of this development. It will transform an underutilized site into a mixed-use property, add residents to further enliven the neighborhood, and create an enhanced ground floor retail presence, all while preserving the essential parking for our visitors. I hope you will vote in favor of this project this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, Gary Walker, Electrical Workers, Local 103, I'd like to speak in strong support also. I'd also like to thank John Madison. I think his group has been keeping us busier than almost anybody in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Max DeVilliers. Thank you. I'm a resident of North Street, and I walk past this site every single day to and from work, on the weekends to and from the T or Faneuil Hall, other places, and I wholeheartedly support this project.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rebecca McKevitz from the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy. We have been of the opinion for a while now that this site is especially problematic considering its adjacency to parcel 12, which is already one of the deadest parts of the Greenway. And so we are excited that the ground level of this development will be activated and the pedestrian experience will be enhanced along the Greenway and in the surrounding neighborhood. We're also looking forward to being able to increase public art along the Greenway if this project moves forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Please step right up, state your name, and speak in opposition.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg Gaylor, the Executive Director of the Boston Preservation Alliance. I want to first thank the proponent for actively engaging with BCDC and responding to a wide variety of feedback in the evolution of the design. It actually has been a very healthy dialogue. That being said, positive movement doesn't always equate with a recommendation to approve. Not all projects are right for the city or a given location. And the Preservation Alliance, like the Civic Design Commission, is unable to offer our support for the project at this time. Given the highly unusual, perhaps unique situation of BCDC, which is a group that clearly supports growth, development, and density, being unable to reach a vote on this project, I urge the board to sit up, take notice, and think carefully before your vote today. And also ask why no one from the BPDA mentioned the fact that there's no BCDC support here. Also note that if the BCDC process wasn't stacked pro-approval, with only 4 votes required to approve a project, but 6 required to reject, the vote from BCDC may have been very different. After unanimously rejecting a previous version just 90 days ago, last week 4 of 6 commissioners at BCDC were still unable to support the current proposal. For a group which almost always eventually gets to approval, please ask yourself, why isn't this the case here? I implore you to consider what it means for this body to approve a project that the Civic Design Commission is unable to support. It's only happened once or twice in decades. This proposal is at the heart of one of the most historically sensitive areas of the city, adjacent to the national landmark Faneuil Hall, Quincy Market, the Blackstone Block, one of the oldest places of continuous occupation in the city, the Freedom Trail nearby with views and vistas of interest and concern to literally millions. This proposal is at the heart of what makes Boston, Boston. The large block occupied by this garage certainly requires an enhancement, in fact, outright replacement. And while this proposal may transform at its core, it enshrines and locks into place effectively in perpetuity a mega block garage 4 decades old, it's simply too massive for this historic area, too looming over Quincy Market just feet away, too impactful to views of the Customs House and general sense of place. That is why members of the BCDC weren't able to support, and I urge you to follow their lead. Finally, I urge you, if this does move forward, the board acknowledge the negative impact on historic resources by modifying the board memo to require mitigation toward a historic preservation fund equivalent to that provided directly to the Greenway Conservancy. A fund structure already exists. And finally, I find it curious that mitigation is going to the Greenway, which has testified of the positive benefits of this project, while none to historic preservation, which is being negatively impacted. That doesn't really match the definition of mitigation, does it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get these.
Excuse me, my name is Victor Branya. I'm chair of the Zoning Licensing and Construction Committee of the North End Waterfront Residents Association, which has voted to oppose this project in an earlier iteration. And I can also speak for the Mercantile Wharf Tenants Association. Mercantile Wharf is the closest major residential property to this site. 2 minutes passes quickly, I just noticed. So I will simply say I am here to plead for historic preservation for all the reasons that Greg Gaylor has stated. I hope in 2 minutes I can point out a couple of other things. One is the area that we're talking about runs from, that is to be preserved, runs from Marshall Street, the Union Oyster House, across Blackstone Street, and up to Faneuil Hall Marketplace. The Blackstone Street block, I am told, is the oldest commercial block in the nation. Please let us preserve that. The Massachusetts Historical Commission pointed out when the BPDA had approved 103 feet of height for the Haymarket Hotel, Massachusetts Historical Commission pointed out that there was a pre-Big Dig agreement, tripartite agreement, limiting the height of the Haymarket Hotel to 55 feet. That was what, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, pre-Big Dig? We were concerned with historic preservation of the area then. Why are we not concerned with it now? To conclude, BK, the 2 minutes passes much too quickly. BK Bowley mentioned phasing out parking sometime in the future. Let's look at that. Leave this in place for now, and then when the time comes, when parking is to be phased out, demolish it and build something that we can all support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, are there any
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Suzanne Taylor. I'm here representing the Freedom Trail Foundation. With over 4 million people visiting the Freedom Trail each year, I'm not in support of the project because I feel that the height of this building separates two of our oldest sections of the city. Boston is visited because of our historic assets, and I'd hate to see something going up in between the two oldest sections of our city. Thank you. And the parking is a problem, too. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further comments in opposition? Hearing none. Are there any questions from the board?
I'm curious as to whether anyone who works in this building was part of the IAG.
Works in the building? Do you mean?
Yeah. People who are responsible for this building.
Or participated in the IAG?
On the Impact Advisory Group? I mean,
Yeah.
BPDA staff were present at the meetings, for sure. As we would be for public meetings, everything.
Was there any discussion of the sight lines from this building to the harbor?
Not to my recollection of the harbor, no.
Okay. And could someone recount what the history of the BCDC votes was?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you. My name is Lauren Shurtleff, Interim Director of Planning, but more importantly, I co-led from the planning team the Greenway District Planning Study 9 years ago. So I'm intimately acquainted not only with the Greenway, but also all of the sites that we looked at as part of that study. And what I can say for the proponent's sake is that we've been meeting with them for the better part of 2 years. And what you see tonight is a vastly improved project that is fully compliant with the Greenway guidelines. That's not where we started. I certainly hope we would end up there, and I really think we have, so for what that's worth. I do have, just because Elizabeth, who runs the BCDC for us, wasn't able to be present tonight, I do have just a prepared couple of lines to explain the complexities and the nuance of the BCDC background. So at the May 7th BCDC meeting, the commissioners expressed their pleasure with how this project had evolved. The building height, which was originally proposed at 190 feet, was reduced to 124 feet, a foot below the Greenway guidelines. This was a major sticking point for many of the commissioners. A vote passed that the development team present at one more subcommittee meeting to refine the design a bit more, and then proceed to the full BCDC at the June 4th meeting. So that subcommittee meeting happened, and the team came back to the Civic Design Commission on June 4th, the full commission. At that commission meeting, the result was a 3-3 tie, but the commissioners that were there all reiterated that they were pleased with how the project had developed and had progressed. The vote from May 7th actually includes an amendment to acknowledge the work that the proponent had done to deal with the issues of massing, as well as the amelioration of parking garage issues, and the improvement of the public realm in their revised submission. So this is why staff felt comfortable bringing it to you tonight.
I guess I appreciate the fact that a number of people are saying that this project has evolved and is better than it was, but I'm not hearing anyone say it's good.
I think it's a good project.
And I find that troublesome, particularly given a tie vote from the BCDC. The reason we have them as a group of distinguished architects and designers is so that they can do the work that we on the board cannot do in terms of not only assuring compliance with guidelines and rules, but also in improving the quality of the final product in a way that brings it closer to some level of distinction. And I, for one, find it very difficult as the person on this board who's trained in design to reject their non-recommendation of this particular project. I mean, they work for us, they're volunteers, and they work very hard. And invariably, they bring about improvements in projects. I don't think anyone questions that. But when you have a tie vote, it really does suggest that they're inconclusive on the extent to which this particular project meets the kind of quality standards that we would expect, particularly on a site like this. I also wonder about a program that essentially limits views down onto Faneuil Hall to 209 people who will be buying those units, since they're ownership units. And I wonder, to get to the question here, what restrictions have been placed on preventing this from becoming yet another Airbnb site?
So I can't quite speak to the Airbnb logistics. I understand them, of course. But I do think that this actually is a good project, and I think that we need to take a bit of a step back from the BCDC seemingly indecision, noting, of course, that there were only 6 commissioners present, and if you wanted to get into it, some of the ones that were not present had spoke favorably of the progress that the team was making. So, you know, who's to say if it was to go back, it might have a different response. But I think in terms of activating the Greenway, of adding residents to this area of downtown, you know, even some of the historical photos, there was more density here than previously, and I do think it is going to have an overall benefit to this area.
There was a time when activating the Greenway was a serious consideration for all of us, but it's been activated now. And this particular parcel, and I say this to my friends in the preservation community, this particular parcel is hardly the most distinguished parcel along the Greenway, and hardly one that anyone would fight to preserve. And replacing it with something better, given all the development that's gone on in town, would be, I think, something that we would all agree to. But in the midst of the development boom that we're facing in the city at this moment, replacing a terrible garage with a 209-unit condominium building doesn't seem, to me at least, like the highest utilization of this space. And we're going to be stuck with this for decades, at a minimum. I'm just dumbfounded that we would be asked to approve a project which, both in terms of its program and in terms of its design execution, it doesn't bring something distinguished to an area that looks into these offices here, the mayor's office, and looks down on Faneuil Hall. I just don't get it. And that is not a question, it's a comment. And I think as board members, we're entitled to make these comments. But part of what we're driving for is distinguished design in the city. And I just don't see it in this project. I mean, can anyone answer to that?
So respectfully, Jonathan Greeley, Director of Development Review here at the BPDA, respectfully, Member Landsmark. The BCDC is an advisory body, and we take that advisory body very seriously. And over the course of the past 2 years, that design has evolved dramatically. I'd also point out that a significant design voice is the Urban Design Department here at this agency, which works extremely hard and has done a tremendous job on this project. I actually think this project is valuable for a number of reasons. A, it adds residential. B, significant public realm improvements on the edges of Faneuil Hall. You have the Faneuil Hall here testifying in favor of this project tonight. And third, I would say it's activating the edge of the greenway consistently. So we have pockets up and down the greenways. Buildings have slowly turned to face the Rose Kennedy Greenway. We now have a dynamic edge, and so on both sides. And so you have the Parcel 9 Hotel, you have this site, and you also have Marketplace Center, which is the appendage to Faneuil Hall, which is also slowly investing in finding ways that's recently changed hands. They're slowly thinking about how do they find a way to activate their edge. We have really one of the most dynamic parcels of the Greenway as you transition to lawn work. And so I think respectfully, this project has come a long way, and as I actually think is a successful outcome, a successful collaboration between an agency, BCDC, and a design team that worked tirelessly. The design program that was rejected by BCDC several months ago was completely revised and completely reoriented to give deference to the historic resource of Faneuil Hall. And so I think that there is we certainly respect the Preservation Alliance, we certainly respect the opinion of Victor Brogna and the neighborhood association he represents, but also there's significant testimony here today in favor, and I think you heard from the director of planning of the agency, also the person who ran the Greenway Guidelines study, that this is a good outcome. And I think that we've worked really hard to balance a number of factors here. I'd also would posit that the future of garages, I think, is up in the air. And so we've worked really hard on garages that have been demolished and repositioned, and I think that's something we've consistently tried to find a way to reevaluate as on a case-by-case basis. And so we've also done the same thing with the government center garage, where some of that parking is going away, but some of it's being preserved. And so I think there's a careful balance here of making sure that we acknowledge the needs of today, but also the needs of tomorrow. I think this project represents a successful melding of a wide range of goals, and as such is a good outcome for this agency. And also, you did mention, one point you did mention a question earlier about Airbnb. I do think that's something we should have the development team address, because that is something that we always have concerns about, but I think it's best addressed by the development team.
Yeah, maybe it should do that.
Yes, with regards to Airbnb, we're happy to put within the condo documents that the unit is not allowed to be Airbnb. We did it on our project in Brighton. We're happy to do it here. We don't envision this location to be an Airbnb type of location. It's more of people who want to live in the city and want to be in this location, which is a great location. With regards to the design, I think the BCDC, everybody loved the design. The issue was the height. The three members that we had a meeting, and they said come back below the guidelines of 125 feet. We came back with the design that everyone liked that was below the 125 feet, and three of the members asked that it would be less than 124 feet if it was 100 feet, or what happens if it was 90 feet. So our view was we did everything they asked us to do, and we came back with a great project that really fills the donut hole that's between the two historic districts. This is at night. It's not lit up. It's not people walk around this building to get to where they're going. When I mean walk around it, they go off the side streets to get away from, because it is not inviting. This will connect the two historic districts more so than anything. But as BK will talk about the,
Hi, I just wanted to clarify what the BCDC said throughout the process about the design of the building. When it was 197 feet, they loved the design of the building. They kept talking about the quality, about how it was contemporary but contextual. It was just too high. And they are on record at every single meeting that we went to them, including subcommittee meetings, almost uncomfortably saying how much they liked the design. The only time they balked even a little bit was when we came back with something that smacked of being maybe a little too traditional. That was at 135 feet, and they asked us to go back into subcommittee and have a more contemporary but contextual design to the building. And they all applauded the final design that we came up with, and even thought that they should write something in their motion that would say that the project could not be value engineered to an extent that it would lose the distinguished design character that it had. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in turning this into a one-on-one debate, but I will say that the reason we have a BCDC is so that they can have the conversation about design quality that we can't have within this forum. I'm deeply troubled that we may move forward with something that even in its final iteration didn't seem to generate the kind of unanimous support or nearly unanimous support that we ordinarily see from them when potentially controversial designs come before us. And my fear is that in having this particular program on this particular site, we will actually be perpetuating the existence of a parking facility on that site. The preservation will be the preservation of something that none of us really favor in the first place. So I find it difficult to support this, but I'm not the only member of this board. I'm only the member who has a design background.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I have a
Yes,
question.
Mr. Minor.
I have more of a comment, and I agree with Ted. We should put something there, 20 to 30 stories that's overlooking the Greenway. We agree on a lot of things, Ted. The thing is, the design people said they like the height, but these people have to do kind of weigh everything. So I think more height would have been better, but I think this is good. Jonathan makes a good point on garages, and people that own commercial real estate with garages are very concerned about the future with autonomous vehicles. So they don't think in the future that cars are going to be parked and they're going to get dropped off and the car's going to go somewhere else. So I think that that's something that they looked at also. I'm in favor of the project. One, Mr. O'Malley from Faneuil Hall, the woman from the Greenway, two people that are integrally involved in this are in favor of it. It's another 209 units towards Mayor Walsh's aggressive goal on more housing, especially affordable, 27 more affordables. And again, I wish you had more height. One, you'd have more units, you'd have more affordables, you'd have more taxes for the city, and so on and so forth. But it's, three people spoke against it. One, someone, I think, wants to preserve it, which I don't know why the hell you want to preserve that. Another person wanted to demolish it. So I don't think there's a consensus on those that are in opposition. It's just change, and some people don't like change. So I think it's a good compromise. It's a good project.
Okay, are there any other comments from the board or questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations. Item number 22.
We already did it, right? Oh, what is it? Oh, got it.
Okay, this is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the development plan for Planned Development Area Number 118 in relation to the proposed Rio Grande development located at 2343 through 2345 Washington Street and 11 through 29 Roxbury Street in Roxbury. This hearing was duly advertised on May 29, 2019 in the Boston Herald. In a BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so, again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a period for 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Mr. Whiteside will now present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Paul Hemus. At this point in time, we would respectfully request that the item be tabled for rescheduling.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table this item until another time to be determined by the director.
Second.
Okay, second, motion, I made the motion. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. And we've already concluded all the other information, all the other items. So it's a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting passed. Motion adjourned.
I was filling in for Priscilla.